Still working on the cuddy bumper. I'm working on the bracketry that holds the front bumper onto the car, and I wanted to use these carriage bolts so I could keep the adjustment in it. And this bottom hole is a little bit too small. These top ones are way too big. What's happening here is I'm actually eliminating a bracket that floats inside of here, trying to cut weight. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to file this slot out so the bolt fits perfectly. And I'll put some copper behind here, add some weld, and file these top slots. You want the square portion of the carriage bolt to bite so you can tighten it without needing to hold a wrench on the back. Not perfect, but it'll get the job done. Here's the back of that bracket. You see there's very minimal cleanup I have to do on that weld. I'm bolting up these brackets. You can see they're not completely welded yet. This is on the front of the car. I was going to show you these original brackets that they're bolting to. We trimmed them down, and we were able to take a bunch of weight off them. They'll be cleaned up later and painted.
The owner wants the bumper just put back to the stock distance where it used to be. And after everything was off in measurements, you can always take metal off, and he made it like an inch longer. You can see where the markings were where it used to be. We're 1 inch too long. So we just got to cut the tube 1 inch, weld it back, and then it'll be back where it was stock. Behind here has to be a little slot so this plastic will slide. When you're putting this thing together, there's all this rubber that has to go involved and hold in there. So the rubber gives when you get in an accident, but it's when we're trying to bolt this up, you're trying to get all this rubber packed in, and when a final fit, these will be slid right in there, and you can see an inch. There's got to be a little piece of metal underneath there that'll tack on, so that'll slide in there. When we're doing this, it's going to be a bear to get your hand up in there and try to slide that rubber into this little slot we're going to make. So as this front bumper went on, there was filler panels that are rubbery, and they were attached to the big massive bumper beam that went in here, and they had these Christmas trees, the one-time push-on devices, but that all is gone now. So you have to have something that's gonna have these rubber pieces held in place, or you'd have these big gaps because the bumper's going back in the original location. It was made to give when the shock absorber went in. So we had to make little pieces of sheet metal, just tack them on, so then this holds it, and then they're droopy, so just put another little tab on here. So, yeah, that's all they're gonna do is sit in there. And then the grills were made so if they got hit by a bird or something, they're spring loaded, and the grill goes in and out. We gotta make a little T-bolt, and a spring holds that so the grill moves. Well, you'll see now that as much metal was removed as possible. It still has some weight to it, but I'd say more than half of the weight is reduced. He's got it in the stock location. These things have to be, these filler panels have to be heated up and warmed up so they go into like slots. And paint has to be removed. Then next step you'll see is that all this has to be bondoed up and it'll be painted the same color as the car. We're just gonna do it in that Murder Nova, flat black. And just run it, whatever we got. These pieces that we had to go in between here, we could trim them or whatever and go in and make them fit, but they really don't do much for the looks anyway, so he's just gonna eliminate them. So I'm 58 years old and I've had a bad back for a long time, so I'm not very strong, but you'll see, I can lift this thing pretty easy. So I'd say it's like 60 pounds. There was a kid that used to come around and whenever you're working on stuff, there's always kids that come around. And I haven't, he's 17 at the time, now he's 34 years old. And he stopped by, he's going through a divorce. And he said that his wife had a 442 Olds, and he was backing into the garage and he hit the workbench and dented it up. Well, they were hurting for money, so he didn't want to take it to a body shop. And he went on YouTube and he's looking around for body work, and all of a sudden he sees us working on the Javelin, and he goes, that was really good that you made a video about body work. I watched that, and he says, I did everything that you said, how to mix it up and everything, and I was pretty proud of myself after I finished because it turned out perfect. We're hurting for Hardner. This is old Bondo that's been laying around a while. Sometimes you get chunks. Okay, I'm going to start off with these serious holes. That'll be a start. Each time you put a coat on, it gets closer to being level. We don't want to have all this other stuff where it's serious sanding. This is going to be hard. Usually when we were kids, we just use our fingers. The trick is to not think that you're going to get it all done the first time. And trying to do the least amount of sanding. Pack it in tight so she gets a good bite. Because we have so little of hardener left, I dumped the hardener out first to see how much we had. and then I'd have to match the Bondo for that amount of hardener. Well, I thought, once we do it, we won't be able to mix any more up, so I might as well rough these out, and then I can go over stuff that was done before. This thing just really eliminates a lot of sanding. Just shaves it down, and it keeps it level. All you're trying to do is just knock it down so then the next course comes closer to the shape that you wanted. Like I always tell you, even when you get brand new hardener, it separates. So you take the cabinet, you don't have it all, lose it all. So you just work it around, and you got some room. Peekaboo, peekaboo, peekaboo. So you're just trying to knead this around so it gets mixed up. So what happens is, when you work with Bondo, I gotta rub this off. I got hardener on here. You don't want to ever get that hardener down into your Bondo in the can, or you'll have reaction going on. And whenever you work with this, it's messy, okay? And you can only do so much work with the Bondo before it hardens up. So they always say a golf ball size. Because pretty soon, you're trying to do too much at one time, and it's just a waste, it hardens up on you. And stuff costs pretty much. So try to utilize as much as you can and get as much out of the can, and most of it gets sanded to the floor anyway, so it's about utilizing it efficiently. So you got this much. I always said, well, now it's not coming out. I just usually put a line going across. It just seemed to always work for me. And you chop it up into it. Spread it across there. Always have a spare one next to it so you can get the stuff off of one putty knife that has, you'll see it pink and red. Or just kind of spread it in. Looks like we're ready to go. Don't have too much on the putty knife while you're trying to work it. The masters are the guys that do drywall. You watch them guys do stuff. They know how to do it to minimize the amount of sanding they gotta do. These are those hooks that were for when we lifted cars up back in the day. You had a dangerous bumper jack. And then there was rusted pitting here.